Hello and welcome to this Takeda episode of the Eternal Law. Last time on the Eternal Law we had to deal with an Oda army led by Oda Nobuhide racing down and invading our home province of Kai. Luckily the army of Takeda Shingen was able to draw them north into a field battle out in the open where the armies engaged to decide the fate of the two clans. The Oda army was locked in position by Takeda's light infantry, and all the while Takeda cavalry raided the enemy's back lines until eventually they had to break. Then after the Tokugawa suddenly invaded Suruga to the south, our attention was distracted by an Uesugi invasion to the north, which was defeated by a huge ambush in which all the Uesugi forces were slaughtered by Takeda cavalry. That fool Kenshin! Now ye've seen why the Murakami fell and the Oda fled. The smashing of horses against the ranks of our foes can be heard up and down the land. We are now the mark against which all clans must be tested. Even if we do not conquer, every victory at home brings us the respect and fear of all the great lords. Soon the land shall be handed to us in peace, for fear of prompting us to take it by force. So we pick up on the battle results screen from the ambush we saw at the end of the last Takeda episode. And you can see it's a clear victory. We did lose the unit of Yari Ashigaru in Nobukado's force, who was holding off some enemy cavalry, I believe. And Shingen's force took barely any casualties at all. Some fair casualties amongst the Katana samurai who were fighting with the enemy's Katana Waiko actually, but still nothing to worry about, and the Uesugi threat has been diminished. Now, as moving to the next turn, we see that the Oda and the Tokugawa have broken their alliance, so that's good news. Two of our big enemies are now potentially going to go to war with each other. And as usual we have threats from the Yamanouchi of attack. Now here's the issue that we kind of skipped over last time. It happened really quickly. The Tokugawa have captured Suruga with a big army we know nothing about, apart from the fact it's escorted by a Metsuke. We also have a message saying that the Mori clan has been completely destroyed. That doesn't concern us so much. Another message says that our concealed army is discovered. It turns out it's just the ambush forces, so I guess that's just informing us that the Uesugi now know we have forces there after that ambush, which is perfectly fair. You can see also there they have two scattered forces hanging around up there. Possibly going to be annoying in the future because they could raid some of our properties out in the province. I'm moving Nobukado's force down towards Kai in order to counter the new growing threat from the Tokugawa. Meanwhile, I have to decide what to do up here. That force could attack the farmlands there in the east. Well, this force over here isn't really a threat. I decided I was going to move Shingen down closer to the castle to support it, and since I was going to be close to this force anyway, I thought I'll just go and finish them off. This will give Shingen some more experience points and bring him closer to leveling up, so it's worth just taking out these little forces. There we go, a victory. We lost a couple of men in defeating those stragglers, but nothing to worry about, and there we go. Now Shingen doesn't have enough movement points to move out of that forest he's in now, but I'm going to move him down to these crossroads, or at least that's my plan for now, mainly to defend against the Yamanouchi threat coming from the east. Of course there is still the Oda threat in the southwest as well, but since we very recently defeated them, they're probably not going to be a huge worry. I still have Nobushige's force in the castle at Matsumoto to do something with, and I was planning to actually stop the Uesugi force having a chance to raid the farmlands. You can see there's a small building on the right hand side of the screen. That represents your farmlands in this province. If an enemy army gets to it, they can burn it down basically, and this heavily impacts the agriculture of the province. And since the samurai economy is pretty much based entirely upon agriculture, this is an issue. So we do need to actually protect that. Nobushige didn't have enough movement points to actually attack the Uesugi force, but he can at least get in the way, so that means for at least the next turn our agriculture is going to be safe. Oh, what was that? Yet again the Oda suddenly attack, and at the same time the Tokugawa army from Suruga marches up and besieges Kai. Suddenly things are looking pretty dire for the Takeda. Out here I see the beauty of the land in full measure, and the efforts our people are making to keep their livelihoods in this harsh time. This valley, the mouths of which are ringing with the sounds of marching troops, its grandeur makes me forget why I must fight over it. Perhaps I shall stay here until the very end. Rumour has it that our enemies are on the cusp of snatching our whole domain in one swoop. On a day such as this, the prospect of fading into this valley to die in peace seems more inviting than my honour will allow. So indeed, as we enter the next turn, we get reports that Kofu Castle, the castle at the centre of Kai, has been attacked. We also get a mission advising us to counterattack and destroy the Oda army. So since I was going to do that anyway, this is a good mission to be given by the clan retainers, since we will reap the reward. The reward there was increased line of sight for provinces. So here's the Tokugawa army. We don't know much about it, even though it's sieging us. Although we know it is at least of similar size to the castle garrison that has been called up to prevent the attackers being able to get in straight away. Here's the Oda army, consisting mainly of heavy infantry, just like the last one, Naginata and Katana samurai, a few bowmen, and at least some cavalry in there. We don't know so much about it, but my first decision to deal with this crisis was to move Funobukado right down to Kai and challenge the Tokugawa besiegers to try and allow the people inside the castle to sally out, but it turns out I don't even need to do that, because the Tokugawa refused to give battle and retreat to that forest to the southeast. So now I had the option of pursuing them. I could go after them, however it's in my interest not to do so, because this large army, although not particularly powerful and consisting mainly of long spears, so an interesting phalanx army, because it's camping in winter outside of its own friendly territory, they're going to be taking casualties by attrition over the winter. So there's a slight advantage for me now to just let them wait. I can just put Nobukado in a position to guard the castle so they can't attack it, and then see what they do in the next turn. Back up at the north side, I moved Shingen back to the castle, and then I decided that I'm going to put another force outside the castle to act as a relief force for when the Oda inevitably attack. This will also leave space in my command to call up garrison troops from the town when the Oda attack the castle, which it seemed inevitable that they would, based on their current trajectory. I also have to deal with Nobushige's force. Now he's still at risk of being attacked by the Yamanouchi if they decide to get involved in this conflict. So I decided to just march him north onto the road up to Echigo, basically following the route that that little Uesugi detachment had been taking. So he's going to sweep down towards Matsumoto from the north in the next turn and potentially influence any events that are going on there. Also recruiting a few more troops since the war really is heating up. It looks like we are safe for at least a little bit. In the last turn it looked like there was a risk we were going to lose both of our castles, but no, it's looking okay with the Tokugawa on the run, and now the Oda are making their move, so it's going to be up to us to secure the north of our territory by defending the castle. The enemy has a lot of heavy infantry and we don't. The Takeda army here is almost entirely Ashigaru troops, so it could be challenging, but we do have the advantage of having reinforcements coming from the outside to aid in the battle. Let's see how it goes. So here is Matsumoto Castle with the Takeda force inside. It has further fortifications on both wings compared to the last time we saw it when the Takeda assaulted the Murakami. The enemy begin by sending cavalry up the middle with all their heavy infantry slowly following, and they have detachments, two detachments of heavy infantry attacking the southeast and southwest side of the castle, which you can see on the map on the top right hand corner. On the far north side of the map, all of the Takeda's light cavalry reinforcements are just rushing in. You can see the enemy has a cavalry reserve at the back of their army, and that cavalry reserve is going to be responding to my cavalry incursion. Meanwhile, their cavalry vanguard is actually just attacking the walls even without support from the infantry body, so that was a poor choice from them. They're going to be defeated promptly. So here we go, the enemy's cavalry reserve, including their general, has engaged with my cavalry reinforcements. I have a small number of infantry reinforcements moving up in the background. It's going to take them a while to get close enough to influence this fight. Now I was pretty happy about this current arrangement because the enemy general is fighting with anti-cavalry units, which basically means he is going to be taking losses in there, and there's a chance that we can defeat the enemy general early on. The enemy began to move their spears back to counter my cavalry, but I detached a unit of cavalry to draw off those spears to chasing them so that the main group of my cavalry would be safe from them. Unfortunately, they're not going to be safe from the enemy's sword and bow infantry, which are now coming down to get involved. Although my light infantry is beginning to move up, I have a few spears and swords coming in to influence the fight. The enemy's long spears actually turned around and were now threatening the main body of my cavalry again. However, I catch them up in battle with my Yari Ashigaru in order to stop them from being too much of a threat. these Yari Ashigaru are now going to face the brunt of the enemy's both heavy and light infantry forces, which are coming back to get involved in this fight rather than going up towards the castle. The good news is that the enemy force has been effectively split. About a third of their army has come back to fight my reinforcements, 1/3 attacks the castle as planned, and the other third is currently inside their detachments on the south side, which are actually sneaking up almost unnoticed by me. It was only around this point in the battle I actually noticed that they were starting to climb the walls, because I was busy micromanaging that fight with the cavalry. So in order to counter this large incursion, mainly by the Naginata and Katana Samurai, so the enemy's heaviest units, I started rushing some of the guys inside the castle to get into a position where I can stop them. I didn't really have enough guys up here in the central section of the castle to really prevent them from getting a foothold. However, I do have numerical superiority on the inside, just because so much of the enemy's force is caught up rushing back to deal with my reinforcements. So I'm rushing up troops from the wings of the castle where I had expected the enemy to attack into the centre to deal with that. Let's head back to the cavalry battle outside the castle. You can see the enemy's infantry are very heavily engaged here. My cavalry are starting to work their way around behind them, but are still being caught up by the enemy's general units. I believe it was around this point in the battle I actually killed the enemy general, which means from now on the enemy are going to be a little unsure, a little demoralised about everything that's going to happen, and this is going to help me out defeating those heavy infantry back in the castle. The Yari Ashigaru, who I've been using to fight the enemy's long spears, decide to run, or those that live decide to run. So now the sword Ashigaru that remain are in big trouble, and they're going to be slowly destroyed. I detached a new unit of cavalry led by Shingen. These are the elite fire cavalry which I had inside the castle to come out and start dealing with things. The enemy had a hidden unit of light cavalry somewhere to the south of the map, which rushed out to try and attack these guys, and so another cavalry engagement is going to begin. However, I have the advantage. My fire cavalry are going to outmatch the enemy's light cavalry, as well as having Shingen in there to spur them on. There was a risk that Shingen himself would be killed, but luckily that didn't happen. The enemy here are moving up some Katana Samurai to get involved in this fight. At the last second I noticed this and pulled some horsemen off to face them. It's going to be a fairly even battle, elite cavalry against elite infantry. Neither side has a particular advantage. They're not weak or strong against each other in this case. I'm moving up some lone sword Ashigaru to help out. So the cavalry fight outside the castle down here has pretty much ended. I have a few guys behind who are just acting as a rear guard and a shield for the rest of the survivors to rush up and actually join Shingen's force back up at the top. On the south side of the castle you can see I pretty much surrounded the enemy's heavy infantry force inside and I'm starting to work my way through them. The enemy are stronger man for man, but they're possibly triply outnumbered in these engagements. I'll also have my long spears jabbing from behind the guys fighting. So while the enemy are fighting my front line samurai, spears are being jabbed out at them to distract them. And this seemed to really help. It did defeat quite a lot of enemies. Over here it wasn't going quite as well because I didn't have as many numbers on this corner of the castle, but you can see I'm trying to create a spear wall with these long Yari Ashigaru to stop them getting any further into the castle, and then I'll just gradually wear them down, pushing them towards the corner and jabbing them with the spears and trying to fight them man to man with the lone swords I have up here. So what's the enemy's remaining main force out here doing? A lot of their heavy infantry still has not engaged. They're still running up and down this hill, getting themselves exhausted, which is a shame for them. One unit of Katana Samurai was coming up the hill. It was chasing the cavalry that I had retreated from the engagement down at the bottom. Now they're taking arrow fire from the men on the walls as they come up. They were probably intending to climb up the castle walls, because I've moved so many troops away from this zone of the castle to defend the south side from the enemy's heavy infantry. This side was relatively undefended by infantry, but of course it has this huge wall of Takeda cavalry in front of the gatehouse, which just slams down into the enemy formation, cuts down a whole load of them, and instantly turns away and runs back. So I'm kind of using cycle charge tactics, but I'm only going to do one cycle in this case, because I wanted to just leave these enemy infantry units to get hit by arrows for a while, and my cavalry were really exhausted from all the action they've been involved in, so I pulled them back inside the castle for now. The enemy's infantry start to climb the wall towards my archers to take them out, which is a good move from them. Meanwhile the rest of their infantry body is approaching from the south side. However, they're kind of too late. They were approaching from the north side, and here on the south side we can see that the enemy's infantry has all been destroyed. So now the main body of my force has moved away, and the remnants of the enemy force are going to have to face the entire attack of the army, which is still relatively healthy. So I definitely have possibly a 4-to-1 numerical advantage, and I'm inside the castle. The guys outside have almost no chance. I'm moving Shingen up to observe this final battle and inspire the archers in front of him. You can see the katana samurai indeed managed to get their way up into the walls and are cutting through the lighter troops which I have up here defending it. However, these guys have no general, they're exhausted, and they're heavily outnumbered. So even though it looks like it's going okay in the short term, they're not going to want to continue this fight for too long. Once they get really tired, they'll just give up and go home.
My lord, a glorious victory.
And this was the moment when that indeed happened. The enemy's long yari ashigaru came up into the castle, but at the same time the entire enemy army decided to just retreat from the field. The ones already inside the castle are going to be cut down by the Takeda troops, stopping them getting to the gatehouse where they need to escape. All those outside just start sprinting away, and this unit, which hadn't even engaged, runs away. The unit right down the hill running away as well. So the entire Oda army has been destroyed, the castle has been defended, and Shingen's force took relatively few casualties thanks to the splitting up of the enemy army and the extremely useful interference that the reinforcement cavalry managed to provide. So let's head back to the strategy map and see exactly what the consequences were and where we're going to go from here. Unity of their officers, clarity in their regulations, vigour in their soldiers, valour in their horsemen. All these things make the Takeda a clan like no other. They stand besieged on all sides by enemies, but they shine on as undying as the stars. My lord, I cannot apologise for the disgrace I hold by still living while my brethren lie dead at Matsumoto's walls. However, I can use my last breaths to urge you of a course I believe to be of great importance. You must not march against the Takeda a third time! The battle report reveals that pretty much the entire Oda army has been destroyed, with just a few hundred casualties in Shingen's force, most of them being amongst the reinforcements. As we can see on this second panel of the report, one of the cavalry regiments was destroyed and all of the other units in that reinforcement army took heavy damage. But the crisis has been averted, and still we are relatively healthy in terms of our military in the area. In the same turn, the Uesugi move a force up to where the Yamanouchi are, and the Yamanouchi suddenly declare war on us. So it seems the Yamanouchi and the Uesugi are going to do some sort of joint assault from the east in towards North Shinano. So yet again, as soon as I defeat one foe, another huge threat presents itself. This is going to be a tough challenge for Shingen to deal with. He now has to deal with 2.5 stacks of troops with his own 1.5 or so. The good news is that the mission to defeat the Oda army is successful, so we get increased line of sight on the edges of our provinces. Just means we can see a little bit further into the enemy lands and know a tiny bit more in advance whether enemy forces are about to invade. So here's the big problem. We've got the huge Uesugi main force led by Kenshin Uesugi himself, and the Yamanouchi main force and a reinforcement group behind it, and they are sure to move on our province very soon. Of course, we still have the problem of the Tokugawa down in Kai province. Still standing there. Their troops have been depleted by the looks of things, and we also have more troops in the area due to recruitment, so this battle will be easier than the battle that would have happened if I had attacked them in the last turn. So it looks like it was a good idea to let them wait a turn and have a few of them die out over winter. Nobushige's force is continuing its mission to come around the top of the mountains of North Shinano and chase down that Uesugi detachment. Uesugi troops flee south from this, but of course they're fleeing towards the castle. So now Nobushige attacks a second time, and Shingen's army is able to reinforce from the castle, meaning the battle is extremely one-sided. So I'm going to auto-resolve that. This is going to give experience to both Nobushige and Shingen. I believe it's also Nobushige's first victory when he was commanding his own separate force. Or at least when he was leading the attack with his own separate force. And Shingen actually levels up inside the castle, so this is good news for our upcoming campaign. The Uesugi, we now have a level 3 general. I tried to move Nobushige, well I tried to move him into the castle but he couldn't make it, so he's going to camp outside the castle, and I'm going to link up the army I was using to reinforce Shingen with Nobushige so they can be under his command from now on. So next I need to actually apply the level up to Shingen. I chose to give 2 levels of Cavalry Commander, 1 level of Sneaky, and 1 level of Poet. So the Poetry increases our speed of mastering the arts, the Sneaky makes him better at ambushing, and the Cavalry Commander gives him bonuses to cavalry charges in his army and allows him to use new formations. Now I'm going to place him in an ambushing position on the road between North Shinano and the Yamanouchi lands, on the guess that they are going to march west towards us. At the same time, I'm negotiating with Oda Nobunaga, the new leader of the Oda clan, who's just come in this turn, and he was actually willing to agree not just to peace, not just to trade, but to military alliance.
Your terms are even-handed and fair. Your words respectful and becoming to your honor.
So this is excellent news. The war with Oda has ended. They have seen that attacking the Takeda lands is never a good idea and instead want to be our friend. So that's 1 less enemy to deal with in the future. So of course we now have the Yamanouchi, so as one goes out another comes in. So next it's time for Nobukado and some reinforcements coming in from Kofu Castle to deal with the Tokugawa invaders once and for all. Dispatch them from our territory so you don't have to worry about them anymore. Of course there'll probably be another army and we still need to invade Suruga and take it back. But in the meantime, let's see what we can do about this Tokugawa force. So here is the Takeda army on the battlefield. Its left wing is all the heavy cavalry I can muster. The main line is flank guards consisting of naganatas and spears, as I usually do. The actual centre of the main line is all katana samurai, with all the light infantry being held in reserve. And they go along here, and then here are some of the right flank guards, spears and naganatas again. On the extreme right we have the lighter cavalry, and they're being reinforced by more lighter cavalry coming from the reinforcement group. The reinforcement group also has some lighter infantry in it, but I don't think they're actually going to make it into this fight in time. Now, right at the beginning, the enemy sent forward a single small unit of cavalry, perhaps to scout us out. However, as they come over this hill, they see the huge Takeda formation in front of them, and they apparently freak out. They just decide to charge into it. Not sure what they were thinking, but they charge right into the edge of my heavy cavalry formation, and my heavy cav just charge forward and skewer them, and then 2 of the groups on the extreme edge come around to flank them from behind. So that enemy scout group is completely annihilated in just a couple of seconds. Really not sure what they were trying to achieve there with that little attack. Perhaps it was just to test me, to see how I was reacting. I don't know. Anyway, a very successful attack. You can see also here in the center I have some Baishigaru, which I'm going to be moving in front of my formation to do the usual screening force. And here's the light infantry reserve I mentioned behind Nobukado. Here's Nobukado himself looking out over the force, waiting to join the battle himself, hopefully, later on. So let's have a look at the enemy's force. They seem to have a phalanx of long yari set up, so I assume that's what their main line is. A lot of it's hidden at the moment. At the back we can see one very interesting unit, the Tokugawa mounted gunners. There's actually a matchlock unit on the field. You can see they have guns on their back here, and they are a mounted gun unit, which gives them extra maneuverability. So they were actually something to worry about. As I got near, some enemy archers appeared. I guess they ambushed me from that forest, although I didn't know they were there really, since it would be the logical place for them to station their archers. My archers move forward to start skirmishing with them. I have a slight height advantage and a slight numbers advantage, but I'm using Ashigaru where they're using samurai. So the skirmish fight would be pretty much even, though I believe they bring up an extra unit of archers, so the skirmish fight would have gone in their favour if I continued it for too long. Eventually I decided to just move the whole force towards the enemy. Out here on the extreme left, I'm sort of trying to draw things off with a big group of heavy cavalry who are going to do some rear attacks. Here we get to see the enemy's phalanx reorganizing itself. It's reorganizing itself because they notice that I'm bringing all my cavalry around the back here. So it kind of started splitting into 2 lines, and they're going to send all of their heavy infantry back to defend their rear and use their light infantry at the front to defend against my attack. But this was good news for me because my attack is going to be all heavy infantry, so I'll be able to cut through them. So basically I just decided to charge forward at this point before the situation turned back to the enemy having some form of strength. The enemy general charges out, I think that's their subordinate general charging out, into my heavy cavalry. This is more good news for me. I can surround that unit with my heavy cav and defeat them. Here you can see the katana samurai moving forward. Here the light mounted naginatas breaking up those bows so that my katana samurai can advance safely towards the enemy lines. Once they get there, they'll do their thing. In the background there, we just saw a flash as the Tokugawa mounted gunners blasted at these fire cavalry at point blank range. Now that they're engaged in melee, the fire cavalry will definitely win out. They're much better melee units fighting up on that hill. You can see some long yari are coming up, so I need to be wary of these units getting too close, or those fire cavalry will go down. So I'm rushing some Ashigaru to help out. Here on the extreme left flank, one of the enemy units of long yari Ashigaru is completely overwhelmed and destroyed. At the rear, things were actually going okay for the enemy forces. They have Katana Samurai engaging with my mounted Katana Samurai, a fairly even conflict. At the back I have a few light cavalry who I had to retreat because they were taking too much damage. Here's the problem area, which I actually didn't notice. The enemy general and some long yari Ashigaru were fighting with my bow samurai. Bow samurai not being particularly strong in melee, and especially not strong against spears. A lot of them died before I noticed and managed to get them out of there. So that was a bit of a problem area. But really it didn't matter, because we see here in the middle the enemy formation is completely broken up and I'm just surrounding them. Although it is hard to tell because both sides of course have the same uniforms. But suffice to say, if you look on the map at the top right hand corner, you can just about see that all the enemy's units in the centre are retreating, and I'm beginning to surround all the remaining pockets of resistance. Inside this forest there was a huge fight going on. Lots of my Ashigaru fighting with the enemy's Ashigaru and some of their bow samurai. But they all spontaneously started to run when they realised how split up they were from the rest of their army. Plus both of the enemy commanders had fled from the field at this point, so they weren't exactly setting a good example. The enemy army started to just retreat all over the place, and the Takeda cavalry started really mopping them up. They take huge casualties, and those spearmen who were harassing me so much at the back with my little rear attack cavalry began to retreat as well without even really engaging. So it's a decisive victory for the Takeda clan. The Tokugawa army has been destroyed. This means Nobukado will have opportunities in the future to move south and start actually conquering new territories for once. And of course the home province is safe once again. Let's head back to the map.
Nobushige schemes every day to usurp your position, my lord. I am sure about that. But I will not allow it. I have already accepted in my heart that you shall one day have to die in battle. You are Bishamonten's avatar now. But when you go, I shall not follow you at first. I will remain on Earth and make sure Nobushige can take no satisfaction from inheriting the clan. If Nobukado, your son, cannot have the clan, then no man shall. I have already started to instruct Hiroko in the ways of statecraft. Thus, even your daughter will be ready to rule in Nobushige's stead.
The battle results screen shows that we took very minor casualties, and the Tokugawa force was almost completely destroyed. Any that remain will certainly desert, so the Tokugawa army is gone. And that's more experience for Nobukado as well. So now I have to decide what to do with him and what my next target is going to be. I wanted to see whether the Tokugawa are willing to enter into a peace treaty as a result of this recent defeat they have suffered.
That is for friends.
I offered it to them and they were simply not willing to even discuss it. So it's not happening, unfortunately. I decided to move Nobukado back to the castle and then around onto the road down towards Suruga, ready to attack the Tokugawa should the opportunity arise. Meanwhile in the north, all I can do is wait to see how the Uesugi and Yamanouchi begin their attack. That's all for this week. Find out what happens when the armies of Oda face new threats next time on The Eternal Law.